All the Fly Kids presents Centerpieces, an every now and then show about Black artists' influence on culture. Hosted by yours truly, Geronimo Knows.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. We are coming to you live from the most visible part of the internet. And if this is your first time here, you are now listening to or watching All the Fly Kids present Centerpieces, an every now and then show about Black artists' influence on culture. I am your host, Geronimo Knows, urban culture, lifestyle enthusiast, reform blogger turned conversationalist. And please be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, rate, comment, subscribe, rate, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, social media, or our YouTube channel, which All the Fly Kids on everything. You Google All the Fly Kids, you'll find us. We're right there. All right. So the timing of this month's Centerpieces conversation couldn't be better. All right. Because COVID-19 has told the whole world psych and has caused major spikes across the U.S. while other countries are experiencing declines in cases and reopening their borders. In addition, anti-racism protests have been happening across the globe because, unfortunately, racism and police brutality are global realities. Stateside, the financial health of the Black community is a hot topic with no signs of cooling off. For all of June, we saw consumers and corporations advocate for supporting everybody Black. The statistic that always gets placed on the table, however, is Black buying power and how there's $1.3 trillion of it, and how this $1 trillion is our GDP, which rivals that of some developing countries. Well, what if I told you in my Maury Povich voice that when it comes to Black Americans having $1 trillion+ in buying power, that it's a lie? You probably won't believe me, so that's why I assembled another panel of brilliant minds to discuss this fallacy. One of those brilliant minds is the author of the book that inspired this conversation. But before I introduce him, I want to introduce everyone who will be helping me with this month's conversation. So first up, we got Akil Wilson, better known as BlvckBroadway. He's the owner of Neat Barbershop in Washington, D.C. He's a journalist and OG contributor to the Washington Informer Bridge and host of the BlvckBroadway podcast, which is also playing on your favorite podcast apps. And make sure if you are on Instagram, you catch him Monday through Friday on IG Live with the Core Report. All right. Next up, we got Anika Hobbs, who is the owner of Nubian Hueman in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. All I got to say is if you like anything fly, whether it's clothes, whether it's accessories, whether it's art, candles, soap. That's an inside joke. She know what I'm talking about. And it's made by Black people. Nubian Hueman is one of the places within the DC, Baltimore region where you can find all of those things. She's also founder of the Black Love Experience, which is in my top 5 favorite annual events, period. Just beautiful Black people all the time. I've never had any complaints in the few times that I've attended. I've always enjoyed myself. And I'm sure it will be back very soon. I'm gonna just put that out there, that leave it open-ended. I should be back very soon. All right. And last but not least, got my good friend, Marcus K. Dowling, cultural agitator.
Yes.
Writer and journalist. You've probably, if you're a reader, you've probably seen some of his writing in The Fader, Complex, Vice, The Bitter Southerner, and Washington City Paper. So he's written a lot of stuff. Look him up, you'll find him, and you'll enjoy what he has to say, even though he's a cultural agitator.
Yes, I appreciate that.
All right, last but not least, we got our guest of honor, the reason why we're all here, the author of the book, The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, Dr. Jared A. Ball, professor of communications at Morgan State University and HBCU in Baltimore, Maryland, and founder of I Mix What I Like, a multimedia hub of emancipatory journalism and revolutionary beat reporting. So again, welcome, Dr. Ball.
The pleasure. Thank you all for having me. Oh, thank you very much.
I'm going to insert the hand clap sound effect in post. So
no, I love it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I like the real one, the effect, the real one. It's all good.
Okay, word. So as you know already, you've been making the rounds with talks before the release of the book and since the release of the book. So and I know you've had a whole heaping different opinions hurled at you about just the work that you put in to assemble all of this information and these statistics and just debunking this myth and propaganda. I myself reading the book, I have to say there were some things that I wasn't aware of, like especially when you got into the parts about just how instrumental, beyond just, you know, conspiracy theorist level stuff, but just how instrumental the U.S. government has been in creating this myth. You know what I mean? Like that was something that was really was really interesting to me. But we're gonna get into all of that. I want to just get it started now and start off with an opening statement. I like to start with an opening statement, which is, while we absolutely should support everybody Black, and I put an asterisk next to that because there's some Black people just like, we're gonna put you over here. But generally speaking, we should support everybody Black, but we shouldn't expect that to be the core solution to our condition in the United States. So what happens after we realize Black buying power is no more real than the tooth fairy leaving a few dollars underneath our pillow? All right, and you don't have to answer that now if you don't want to. We can come back to that at the end. But I just want to put that out there for the whole panel to, you know, mull over as we get into this whole discussion. So, yeah, that's my opening statement.
So, should I respond or do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you all having me, and I'm, you know, I always think it's important to have these conversations as often as possible, given how, as we'll talk about, prevalent the myth and other mythologies are. But essentially, well, to sort of try to answer your question, what I at least argue in this book, and I do have other, I think, ideas about what we should do, and once we realize these and other myths are just that, is that we need to advocate for a public policy, that is legislation, that calls for the redistribution of the actual GDP of this country, as opposed to fussing over the mythological buying power, which is incorrectly characterized as the GDP of Black America. And there's a number of reasons. We can come back to why that's false. And my reason for that is just simply that no group has ever gained wealth or even improved its collective income through consumption or by simply shopping within its own group's businesses. That's not how wealth is created. Wealth is created first and foremost by public policy, which determines how a society will generate wealth and who gets that wealth, how that wealth is distributed. It's also public policy that sets everything in terms of regulation, taxation, tariffs, etc. And then it's also legislation, public policy that determines who is punished, who is surveilled, and who is targeted for punishment or correction. And without understanding that or addressing ourselves to that, there is really no pathway to overturning the inequality that we continue to suffer, that was getting worse even before this crisis, and is likely to really become, I'm afraid, a problem of new heights as a result of this crisis. So in other words, we all participate in producing $20 trillion in GDP for this country every year when we pay our bills or go shopping, go to movies, or, you know, just whatever we do. And what we need is public policy that redistributes that pool of money outside, you know, instead in a better way than it is now, whereas, you know, over 90% goes to really the top 1% or 1/10 of 1% or 400 families in this country, instead of the rest of us.
Okay. So it's definitely deeper than, as a lot of Pan-African and Black nationalists like to say. It's going to definitely take more than Black people just getting on code and actually rooting for everybody Black.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my sort of non-professional answer is always what Kwame Ture said. We need more political organization. We need to be more involved in grassroots political organization and movement building. You know, and as he would have pointed out if he had not been assassinated, what he often said was akin to what we're seeing now. We already know, as he pointed out, that every rebellion in the history of this country involving African descended or Black people has started with police violence. So we already know police are going to be violent and that people are, in our community and others, are going to rebel. The only question is how well organized is that rebellion, and how political is that rebellion, so that its platforms or goals can be not only achieved but maintained. And that's the part we're really struggling with. So obviously something happens, we pop out into the street, we act up, we get certain leadership comes out, we go back in and we go back to business as usual, and then we're back into that same cycle. So that's really, you know, but in terms of the book and my professional argument, we need public policy. My activist argument is we need more organization, and really the two go hand in hand.
Okay. And one thing I forgot to do before we started is actually define for everybody. Well, actually, I'm gonna have you do it since you're the author of the book. Define for people what the true definition of buying power is.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. Buying power is, as a concept, originates in a relationship between the federal government and private business in the late 19th century. Because what they wanted to figure out is just what we're seeing now. They wanted to figure out how much can we exploit workers, meaning how much can we not pay them without them rebelling. And so they wanted to find out how much money or how much could be purchased in society with the money being paid to working people. So it was not a measurement of their income per se. It was not a measurement of wealth. And it was not a measurement of some pool of money that they could organize and determine what to do with if they wanted to. It was strictly a measurement of what available money could be spent on what available goods that were not owned by, of course, the people doing the shopping, but were owned by the business and political elite of the day. Because what they were realizing already was after the Civil War and Reconstruction was that working people were saying, look, we're helping produce all of this product and we're seeing all this money being made, but we're not able to participate or buy any more than we were last year with the money we were paid this year. What's up? And they started rebelling. And so this was part of the response. And then in the middle of the 20th century, the Black commercial media class took this up, rebranded it and weaponized it so that they could attract the billions of what are now, you know, approaching $500 billion spent every year in ad revenue. And starting with John H. Johnson and Ebony Magazine started turning this around in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce to say, look, Black people don't want civil rights and rebellion. Black people just want a middle-class, affluent lifestyle. And Black people are now earning more money after the Second World War opened up the labor force a little bit and now have more money to spend. And if you would spend, that is, if white corporations would spend money with our Black media, we would provide for you a Black audience that can buy your products. So by today, what you end up, and I'm skipping a lot, but by today, what you have is this relationship with the Black commercial press and really just one specific source, but the Nielsen Group and the Selig Center to produce these reports, which on the one hand will help attract ad revenue to Black owned media and would also help project a false reality that the elite in white America want to see. They don't want Black people rebelling. They want Black people thinking that there is a pathway to equality through shopping. So there's sort of ignoble relationship that gets mass produced and reproduced and sent back to us as a political strategy. And that's the trick. What starts as advertising and marketing data and study gets turned around for us through bad reporting and misunderstanding, and in some cases outright falsehood, chicanery, into Black political strategy. And then we're told if we just shop better and spend better and save better and buy Black and bank Black, we can become free. And as much as those efforts are worthy of support, that's just not possible, starting with what I ended with before. We just don't have enough money to generate enough money to then work within an anti-Black and white supremacist system that just devalues Black property on the fact of Black ownership without anything else. For instance, we just don't have the ability to play catch up in the kind of way to close the gaps that people claim can be closed through buying power. Okay.
And just in your last response, you brought up the media, you brought up businesses and whatnot. And like I said, in the intro, you know, we got journalists and we got business owners on this panel. So I definitely want to turn the mic over to whichever one of y'all three want to jump in with something.
I'll jump in. I'm a big believer in the idea that, and Dr. Ball, I love your book. I've read it. It's wonderful. And it speaks to a lot of things that I believe. So I'm a socialist, just by the nature of who I am as a person. It's probably part of the reason why I'm here. And Geronimo always loves my opinion on things because I am a socialist and I'm proud of it. So here's my thought. America's a split system. There's a system that operates for Black people, and there's a system that operates for everybody else. Everybody else operates in a capitalist society wherein the market controls, you know, how people spend money and where the money goes and how it functions and flows within a system. Black people have never been invited to be a part of that system. Never in the history of the country. In 250 years of America, Black people have always been outside of that system. Because Black people are outside of that system, every single motivation that we've ever had to become capitalist in any way gets shut down, whether that's politically or by other minorities buying power, being indoctrinated into white-run systems. That's just the way that America operates. And there's numerous historical notions in regards to this. In regards to Anika and Akil being here, I think that the most effective way for Black people to work within but without America as a capitalist system is to adopt something of a socialized monetary system wherein we look at what we have, not as $1.2 trillion that can effectively fund a system that, you know, is $20 trillion. That's around 15 to $20 trillion without us. But looking at a system that's kind of like a closed loop at whatever that $1.2 trillion looks like, and spending communally with businesses and organizations like what Anika does in Nubian Hueman, what Akil does as a barber, what, you know, say the guys who run, you know, say what Ben Ali did at Ben's Chili Bowl for years, still, you know, the Ali family does, and look at it as a communal way of spending communally against a system that is roughly 20 times larger. So in my mind, that's how America operates. And when you think about that, you have to think about the idea that that goes against what we teach people traditionally as Americans, and especially poor Black Americans, because we teach poor Black people all the time that they have to go and spend money wherever the money is able to be spent in their communities. I was just reading a piece in the New Yorker about the prevalence and the rise of dollar stores in low-income Black communities. And if you know anything about dollar stores, it's where corporations send their second run and third run merchandise into communities for last point of sale. Not first point of sale or second point of sale, but last point of sale. So these are, you know, foodstuffs that are near expiration or post expiration, or things that, you know, to the average regular economic system just don't fit. So you're just trying to turn a profit at the end of the day. So you're actually using this $1.2 trillion of buying power in some sense to, you know, just like to funnel the back end of what your front end system looks like. And the fascinating thing with COVID being an issue right now is that and I just literally, okay, so I live in Spring Valley, Washington, D.C., which is like right down the street from Americans. So it's a pretty nice community. I live in an apartment in a condo, but it's still a nice community. So even at the CVS down the street from where I live, things that were priced at regular price at a certain price are now being priced to sell at 50% off. That's because they've been on the shelves for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, since the beginning of the COVID, of the coronavirus scare. And it's fascinating because when you look at how that trickles down, the relative price of something here as compared to Anacostia at the back end is roughly split now between $1 or $2, which for America overall means that this notion of excluding Black people out of a system, suddenly Black people are really super important. And the most fascinating thing to me coming out of COVID is watching America have to suddenly answer for the fact that Black people's buying dollars, which we looked at the back end of it, like, oh, $1.2 trillion, that's cool. You guys have $1.2 trillion. Like, it's actually now super important. And it'll be fascinating to see how marketing trends and how advertising trends switch, because you actually have to look at Black people as like the middle to forefront of what of what's driving the actual economy. And those third tier sales are actually like first tier sales, because bottom line is bottom line. So I hope that made some sense, but that's just give you a sense of like the way that I'm thinking about things.
Anika, I'll wait. I wanted to hear what Anika would like to say, but I definitely have something to add to that. But
yeah, for sure. I figured you did, Akil, because I know you. So.
No, I mean that's absolutely fine. You can go ahead, Akil.
Okay. Well, Dr. Ball, I appreciate you writing this book, and appreciate someone with the statistics, who's done the education, who's done the research to support a theory that I hold very dearly, which is on this very basic level. And this is some cursory, inflammatory thing that I say, but it's meant to make people think. I'm a journalist. I like to make people think. Money isn't real. I always have been of the opinion that the currency is real. What we do with this paper, what we do with transactions, that's very real. But when we start talking about these trillions and billions of dollars that are being taken or put into communities and into programs and into our economy, that's a very, it seems to be a very superfluous statement to me, because on the ground, you know, like shout out to you, Marcus, you live in Spring Valley. I live uptown. I live, you know what I'm saying, on the ground, like uptown, all of these billions of dollars that have been allegedly infused.
You're in the middle of it, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Shout out.
You're right in the middle of it right now.
Uptown. But
6 months ago, it was a wild time, right?
For sure. It's been crazy. But like, you know, I just feel like this myth of buying power, this myth of our capitalistic prowess in America as Black people has, like you said, it's been weaponized. It's been used against us. It's been used to kind of force this bootstraps mentality on a lot of us, force a lot of us into entrepreneurship, when entrepreneurship isn't necessarily the most beneficial model for certain people's liberation or certain people's families' well-being. I know I'm known as a journalist also, but I'm primarily, my last 20 years of my life, I've been a barber. I've been a real life businessman, like really transacting every day. And due to COVID, to be quite honest, this is the end of that. You know what I'm saying? That's a wrap. So at the end of the day, I mean, I have to pivot from being someone who was doing something that was very quote unquote economically and buying power based sound. Like, I make money every day. I leave with a certain amount of money. I come back in with more. Now I have to pivot into a space that's going to allow me to participate in the new economy. And no matter how much buying power we say our community has, they don't have enough buying power to save every barber, every barber shop, every homeowner, everybody. Ain't enough shea butter to sell. It ain't enough t-shirts to sell. Ain't enough hair to cut. So at the end of the day, I really appreciate people like you, Dr. Bell, for writing and doing the research to quantify this very real fact on the ground that we face. Now, politicians and pundits can talk a lot, and they can say, oh, blah, 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 just like they talked about these PPPs. I know several business people. I'm one of them. None of us received any of those, but I have recently seen the list of those who did. And those people, they got those to prop up capitalism, not to prop up minority businesses, small businesses, to keep the wheels of capitalism turning. And if you're not integral to that process, then you can go. It's crazy how people went from being bums who needed to get their life together for working at Target or working at CVS to being essential workers. You know what I'm saying? Like me being a barber. It's crazy how I was at one point in time considered this is like, you know, a fun profession. This is something that people do for fun. You know, so even though I raise a child off of this, I pay bills, I travel, I do all of that. But this is not looked at the same with the same esteem as someone who pilots a desk and sends numerous emails for a living. And why? Because what they do is in service of capitalism. What I do is in service of my community, of me and my people. What they do serves capitalism. They keep the wheels running. And that will get you 60, 70, 80K a year. I did 100 one year cutting hair. And that was hard, but that's an anomaly. I wasn't supposed to do that. All the buying power in the world is not supposed to see people who are entrepreneurs in my space functioning on those kind of levels. And I damn sure wouldn't hit Zuckerberg numbers or Bezos numbers. So again, all this Black buying power, it sounds cool, it sounds great, but I appreciate someone being able to put the research out that shows that that's actually a lie. So this book and this whole topic matter grabbed me and held me tight. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. That's my thoughts. Mm-hmm.
Anika, you want to go?
Sure. I mean, I'm Black, so
I'm excited to hear what you have to say because I love your business model. So I'm intrigued.
Thank you. I mean, I went to school for design, so I don't philosophize very much. Everything is creative and gray for me. But the only numbers that I used to really deal with are measurements. But I guess for me, I understand that there is a fallacy in the power of our collective buying power. However, I do believe in the use of it in order to produce a mind shift for the masses. So I say that to say, for those that did not understand what their power was or that they even had any power, shooting out those facts, I think has changed the mind of a lot of Black folks. I think it's repositioned them to understand that we can use our dollar to vote and that it can make a difference in our community. Because I can tell you, I am a business that 99% of my customer base are Black people. 99% of the artists and the creatives that I work with, which has been over 600 artists and creatives from about 6 different countries and 35 different countries and 6 continents, have been Black people. And so if we in the US are saying that we have a buying power as a collective unit, Black folks, me just taking my money and spending it here and it's making a difference. I'm not saying that we should continue to like thrive off the fallacy or that is what's going to cure all of us as a whole. But I do think that in the minds of people who do not know that it's an idea that they are able to connect with. I can feel that. I personally see that. So when people come into my store and they see goods that like thousands of SKUs by people who look like them, and then they're deciding to pull this item off their shelf, use their hard-earned money to purchase this from a Black business and take this into their Black home, I see the empowerment in that moment. And so, like I said, even though I agree that maybe it's definitely not the solution. I am someone that definitely believes that we have to be sitting and changing policy. You know, I've had big debates with folks about Mayor Bowser and the Black Lives Matter Plaza. There's been a lot of conversation because for me, you know, kudos to the mayor for doing what she's done. But to me, that's not policy. That's not change. That's not movement. That's not long withstanding. It looks great on Instagram and it's good for your political campaign, but that's not doing anything personally for my business. You know, that's not making anybody march into my space, spend their money with me. That's not changing anything. That's not allowing you for me to have an opportunity to have a seat on any political table. So I don't have anything huge or profound, but my thing is that I think there's also some things that need to be said that can help change the mentality of us as a people. There's such huge work that we can do as a collective. And I do agree that we also need to come together. And, you know, everybody's not going to go to war. And everybody doesn't need to be on the front line. You know, like Harriet, you know, if you don't really roll with Harriet, she shoots you. So It's like everybody's not ready for that. But I do think that we do need to organize. You can just, see it from a lot of things that have been happening lately, that there's no organization. Kudos to all of the youngsters. Like I'm not a millennial or anything like that. Kudos to them for being out there. Kudos to, really pushing the word and getting things out. But behind that, there should be some level of organization that is going to change and really push forward the agenda and the things that are happening behind closed doors. So that's what
something that I was thinking about in regards to this is, and I wanted to ask Dr. Ball, because I think everybody has an answer, but it's the thing that I've been thinking about a lot, just like in preparing for this, is how do you adjust capitalist-minded people to community created goods? And how do you get community-minded goods into a capitalist-based mindset? Like it's the space in the middle there is where America functions best. I feel if you're gonna actually indoctrinate Black people into America at large, which I think is something that we're gonna have to do post-COVID. Like Black people have a large part to play in the post-COVID American landscape. And that to me is the situation. Like, how do you make that fusing occur? Because it has to occur. And I'm just trying to wrap my brain around it, because I'm like, I can't see my neighbor going to Nubian Hueman, though I know that they need to. And I can't express to someone who shops with you, Anika, about the importance of your goods and services in what has been a traditionally white-run, white-led capitalist system. But those things have to occur. So like that to me is the big issue at the crux. And I'm like, and I've been like literally scrambling our brain trying to think about it. Like for numerous pieces, like I've been working on some pieces related to this about Black music and country music finding a synergy. And that's exactly the situation, is like trying to solve for that. So I'm at a wit's end, so I figured I'd throw it out to everybody.
So basically, it's how to change the thinking of buying Black isn't as powerful as buying white.
Yes. So like, how do you look at a Black person and say, okay, so like you've been buying white for all this time, but that's not really, like, you don't have to. And then to a white run system saying, hey, this community of artisans is essential. Like they're absolutely essential. Like you can't do the thing you do without them. Like you functionally cannot. Like it's completely absurd to even think you could try.
I want to get Dr. Ball's thoughts on this, because you look like you ready to.
Well, yeah, I mean, because sort of to the extent I understand the question, this is one of the points, or one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, because I've been making this argument and writing about it and presenting on it, and in so many activist spaces for so many years, debating, discussing it, and one of the issues that one of the reasons is that I wanted to get it out there was, or to present the argument, is for to advocate a greater recognition not only of how propaganda and media work and journalism functions to inhibit our economic analysis and the prescriptions we come up with, in other words, the decisions we make going forward. But to say that we have to get past some of these mythologies and come up with what I would like to see is some new or different ways of approaching old arguments. So in other words, I see no hope in changing the individual attitudes of consumers in any group. I don't see us as overturning and overcoming the PR and advertising and marketing apparatus that we're at war with here to do that. So this is why I'm saying our only real power is in the movement and political power that we all collectively hold as currently insufficiently organized communities. But because there is no economic power to marshal, to develop, to catch up. White wealth is not developed by shopping white. That's not how white people got wealthy. White people got wealthy through first military conquering and then establishing a political and policy apparatus that not only gave them justification through the apparatus of law, but through economics, taxation, et cetera, and so forth. That's how their wealth has been generated. And we shouldn't forget. I mean, it's easy for us to forget given the wild inequality. But even as in a white supremacist, most dominant country the world has ever seen, overwhelmingly white people aren't really secure economically either. You know, vast amounts, millions of white people are poor and underemployed, and even the middle class is precarious in many situations. So this idea that this would work for whites or that it works for Jews or Asians, all of this is part of the mythological apparatus that we have to overcome before we can get to develop what solutions will be. So that's why, and then lastly, my point is just to come back to that point I was trying to make about consumption, individual behavior. I don't want selfishly, I don't want my own or my family's safety to be wrapped up in the attitudes of white or any other group's consumers. I want a situation where by policy, by law, by mandate, the wealth we all create is distributed so that nobody can suffer the way that we're suffering. So yes, we can all set up our own businesses and do whatever we're doing, but if they don't overwhelmingly succeed, it won't mean that someone is starving in the street and doesn't have health care for their child. And conversely, just lastly, you know, part of the myth, and maybe I'll just say quickly and we can come back to it, to our business owners here, you all could, I think, attest to it more than I can, because for me, it is more philosophical. But if you just look at it, first of all, Black people, I think what I quote in the book, the last numbers we have for earnings, Black people earned, I think in 2019 or 18, $800 billion plus. So it's impossible to have 1.3 trillion in buying power when the entire community hasn't even earned that much. And then to say that if you're somehow spending more than you earn, that's powerful, that's part of the mythology. As quickly as the reports themselves say that most people don't see because the journalism doesn't cover it and the people reporting on it never read it themselves, the numbers of the $1 trillion buying power are estimates and projections. They're guesses. In fact, the Selig Center says, we really can't tell you what Black people have in buying power. And they say estimates and projections based on a model and a methodology that is really unclear and not meant to reveal anything. So my point is, all they're trying to do is capture ad revenue from the $600 or $500 billion being spent by the elite corporations in this country. And everything else is just meant to mask and confuse and encourage us away from politics and towards a mythological, we can do better with our money and somehow overcome.
But this is
hold on, Marcus, real quick. I just want to, before you go, I just want to say, I pulled a quote to sum up everything you just said, Dr. Ball, that you made. Page 75 in the book, everybody. Where is power to be derived by consumption in such an increasingly unequal world? Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
Okay, so to this point that you just made, the world is like comically unequal at this point. Like if you don't find the humor in this, like I can't tell you that you don't have a funny bone in your body, because you have to laugh at this instead of crying sometimes. Like the number that I like to always quote to people is that like most industries will lose 75 to 90% of their worth at the end of the 18-month cycle of COVID. So at that point, Black buying power has a space. Like it's actually a thing, like it's a real thing. Like it finally can actually exist in the world. Like it's a real feasible thing that actually could happen. If
okay,
that
hold on. Can I jump in real quick? Because you definitely
go for it.
I would like to ask the doctor a question as well.
Yeah, no problem. You go, because I'm making a point. You go.
So your thing, your thesis, obviously I support it in my own way, but I think I take it quite a bit further. And I'm considering myself, I'm a businessman and all of that. Yes, I am a person who has found a way to be highly effective in capitalism for years, and in a very self-sustaining way. Like, I'm actually practicing capitalism. I've never worked for anyone. I never got a paycheck. You know what I'm saying? I created money, purchased business assets, insured said assets, signed leases, all of this. What I'm saying that to say is this. What I'm doing was once upon a time illegal for African Americans to do. Self-sufficiency was illegal. It was illegal for Black people to hunt or fish. It was illegal for Black people to be independent farmers. So the myth that somehow, some way, we are supposed to compete with the people who oppressed us from practicing these natural laws of self-sufficiency for their own benefit. Now, remind you, like, all the people, all this buying white, etc., that you had said, earlier, there's no such thing as buying white. Who Black makes toilet paper? Who Black makes a car? You know what I'm saying? The monopolization of the resources to even produce these things is what has led to this comic inequity that you refer to.
Right.
This comic inequity is not a product of some natural evolution of circumstances. It's a product of very pointed policy and very pointed, very dedicated, focused effort to keep a portion of the population as completely dependent upon their economic system as possible, while blaming, shaming this segment of the population for not being self-sufficient enough. Right. So that's what we're fighting against.
Yeah. So Akil, what happens, Akil, when the white system falls apart, like completely falls apart?
Fall apart. If capitalism is not sustainable, my opinion, again, Dr. Ball, I have not done nearly as much research as you. I don't pretend to be as smart and as learned as you are. But I know I read a thing or two about a thing or two. And when I've read these things, what has basically led me to understand is that the system of capitalism as we know it is entirely dependent upon a permanent underclass. There has to be a loser. If capitalism is about winners, if capitalism is about the ability to produce and create winners, that is why people want to participate in capitalism, because they want to win. Communism, nobody wins, the state wins, everybody wins. And if everybody wins, then nobody wins. In capitalism, people get to win. But in a win doesn't count unless there's a loser. You're not winning unless you're beating someone. So in order for capitalism to work, there has to be a permanent subclass. Now, when permanent subclasses come into play, the reason that African Americans have become the permanent subclass is a real simple answer: racism. It's really simple. We can identify these people, we can racially exclude them based on attributes that we've ascribed to them either physically or mentally that aren't true, and we can affect their situation. We can indoctrinate our population, our poor people. Like you said, Doctor, there's a lot of poor white people. As a matter of fact, me and my lady talk about this all the time. I'm from the hood, but I ain't from nothing that's nowhere near as drastic as stuff you see in West Virginia or in Ohio or in, Arizona. They from the gutter and they are white. I've been to Chantilly, Virginia. I have seen the poorest white people in the poorest trailer parks. And guess what? They selling and smoking crack too. Why? Because it's an economic decision. Again, I don't pretend to know everything, but I know that there have been some real definitive moves made to put people, not just Black people, but all Black people. Let me tell you why, because we're 13% of the population. So that's not enough people to subjugate for capitalism to work how it works right now. We got to be down 30 of y'all, at least 30% of these people. As a matter of fact, what are we talking about? There's a 1% in America, but that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, what I'm saying is this requires mass subjugation. So subjugating most Black people, that's cool, but that's not enough. We got to keep all these white folks in Idaho and Ohio and in Nebraska. They got to be poor too, so that we can win in New York, so that we can win in Palm Beach, we can win in Miami. That's all I'm saying. Like we can't count our way out of this.
And they're mad too. And this group of white people are very upset I told Marcus the other day that I ventured into the Stormfront website because I'm curious to see what people talk about.
You have to know who these people are.
I went over there and they like Reconstruction era mad over there.
Yeah, meet these people where they are.
Because don't nobody talk about them at all.
I like that description, Reconstruction era angry. That's exactly what it is.
I'm
gonna borrow that.
Okay.
I'm gonna borrow that.
So
who do you encounter?
Feel free.
With this argument, do you hear from do you have like white economists or scholars rebuff your argument more, or do you have like African American philosophers or cultural pundits, so to speak, rebuff your argument more? It's not a popular opinion.
No, it's not a popular opinion, but this is what I love that question. That's a really good question, because what has happened in my, I've literally been writing in terms of commentary form and presentation and lecture on this for about 10 years. And I have sent my work and my argument to people all over the place. Because again, I'm not a quote unquote trained economist. By academic training, I'm a media and journalism scholar, a studies scholar. So I kept looking at this and kept thinking I must be missing something. But so what happens is, so I've literally asked people, I've called people, I've written people, I've sent to people, and no one has ever refuted the argument. What happens is, this is what happens. The first thing that happens is people don't read what I write, don't listen to what I say in lecture form, hear the headline and get offended on an ideological basis. So if they're not, so I've been dismissed as a socialist, or I'm a Eurocentric socialist, or you know, something like that.
Which is funny, because this is a very Afrocentric argument you're making.
Again, certainly I think I could fashion it that way if I wanted to. What I tried to do with this book is to make it as flatline, as empty of my politics as possible. It's not possible to do that. No doubt. Because over the years, the argument gets lost in the ideological position. So I wanted people to at least get the argument before they decide whether. Now, the biggest response that I get is omission. I don't get responded to at all. Or someone from the press will interview me and either
the story
wildly cut down my comments.
Right.
Just happened the other day again, or edit down, you know, or in other words, the argument is. I'm sorry?
I said the story just doesn't run. Like,
right. No, yeah, exactly. Literally, in fact. So what happens is, you know, and it's because of the dots that get connected. There's too many questions that get raised, I think, for a commercial media environment when you start to extend from this. And then it's the Black press in particular that really struggles with this and won't have me on and won't talk about it. And even some of my friends, I'm now in some disagreements over, because they have literally gone on commercial media spaces and misrepresented my argument when I'm not invited on. So, I mean, there's a lot of funky things that happen. So that's a very good question. Yeah.
What you just said brings me to the next 2 points that I'm gonna put together that I want to talk about. So earlier we mentioned The Secret of Selling to the Negro, that was sponsored, produced by Johnson Publishing Company, Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine, John H. Johnson.
Is that a real thing?
Yes, that's a real thing.
Okay, because you know,
you never saw the video?
No, you see it on Instagram all the time. I watch it.
No, that video. No, that video that everybody has seen at one point in time was a real thing that came from one of our own, our esteemed John H. Johnson. Everybody's mom, auntie, everybody reading Ebony and Jet magazine. That guy. So. You got that, and then you mentioned the journalism part about, and you talk about in the book, the death of journalism, and I'm sure everybody on here, especially the journalists on here, can definitely attest to the fact that nobody, for the most part, especially in the big media houses, is reporting anymore. They're just, they're news aggregators.
Saying about his stories and about being interviewed, especially in the Black press. My father, journalist, Capitol Hill correspondent for over 28 years. My father spent his whole career interviewing people like you and speaking on things like this and writing stories like this. And yo, they just ignored my pops. That's all they did. It wasn't nothing to it. They weren't mean about it or anything. It was just, oh, George, he's a great guy, great journalist.
Who's your father?
George Wilson. George Wilson III. That's my dad. He wrote for the Inform. He wrote for everybody.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
radio.
At least by name. I'm familiar with the name.
So that's my pops. That's my dad. He passed 2018. And, you know, a big part of me doing this is picking up the mantle where he left off of. And what his thing was unpopular stories. This type of shit, people don't want to talk about this. People don't want to talk about the mythology in the Black community. People want to theorize their way around it using their rules. But I like this radical shift of thought. What if their rules are just wrong? What if what they're saying is wrong? What if the statistics that they keep giving us are just wrong? I just had to make that. I appreciate you saying that, Dr. Bro.
So with that, those 2 points together, like I said, the death of journalism, and I'll even say people with seemingly good intentions, as I'm assuming John H. Johnson seemingly had good intentions for the Black community, but in essence, it was more maybe self-serving or only serving a certain portion, one section of the Black community at the time, which was much smaller than what we know the Black middle class or the wealthy Black people to be today. Knowing that, how is it even possible to circumvent those individuals within the Black community who are part of the press and who align in a way with what John H. Johnson helped to produce back in 1954?
I wanted to jump in, if you don't mind. All right, so I've worked with like Black journalistic houses. I currently work with the Washington Informer Bridge on purpose, because they're the Washington Informer is one of America's most storied Black journalistic houses ever. So I felt the need to like do that as a Black journalist. It makes sense. I've also a person I've written for Vice, I've written for Complex. I worked for Complex for 3 years. And I can tell you that the hardest part about doing Black journalism is the fact that at some point, the conversation is, how much are you willing to either buy in to yourself versus selling out, which is so much easier to do. That's the hardest part. That's the crux of the whole conversation when it comes to journalism, and Black journalism especially. So like, as a Black journalist, I could tell my Black story to a white publication for 10 times the fee, with 100 times the eyes. But the thing is that the white journalistic house will dumb my story down to a click in order to condense it so that it can sell and do the work that it needs to do in order to make it the money, make that publication the money it needs to make, as opposed to a Black journalistic house, which will not condense my story and give it its full run, but at much less income. And that's the main issue. I think that the biggest problem is that Black people have tried to jump into journalism recently. I look at Diddy a lot with Revolt, which had the best of intentions at the beginning, but the second that you decide that you have to make that sell out move, it's the amount that you're willing to sell out for that gets concerning at that point. Because the second, I'll put it like this, the second you sell out to Pepsi, then you're looking at Amazon. The second you look at Amazon, then you're looking at Facebook, and your eyes get bigger than your stomach in that case. And your Black story, the story that's at the kernel of it, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. The only way that I could see this ever changing, and it's the one thing that I always love about Jay, to mention Jay-Z in the conversation, because you have to mention Jay in the conversation. I love the fact that Jay's in the foreword of your book, Dr. Ball, is when Jay purchased Tidal, the thing that he said about purchasing Tidal was that I want to see how many Black people will support me in owning this arm for music. And it's fascinating because even Jay with title has 100 arms in there that are not Black, that are the arms that he's going to use to market and push this thing. So my only answer there, and it's fascinating, is that, again, it gets back to my early point, is that if you're doing anything Black, you have to look at it from a communal, communist, socialist standpoint and close off that system, and then look at it as a thing where you're maxing out to whatever that number is. And I think, to the point about looking at us post-COVID and looking at the future of what America looks like, it's that Black folk need to sit down and close ranks and figure out exactly how much money we're willing to spend on ourselves. And whatever that number is, to me, that's where the economics start. Because it's like, okay, if that is $1.2 trillion, then all right, that's where we're at. And let's start supporting that and building around that to that point, and then max that out. And that is our socialized economy.
But this is there's a couple problems that I heard in that statement that I'm trying to address here. One, the $1 trillion, we don't have $1.3 trillion.
Right, but we don't know. That's the thing.
No. We hold on. We do know, in the sense that we know what we've earned, which was only 800 billion. So we know we're not spending. We don't have, in terms of, but the number itself is one thing that is fraudulent. What the concept itself is also misrepresented slightly in what you just said. The money we have isn't money that we have as a pool that we can determine how to use as if we were a private equity group or running a national economy. The money that we're talking about here is money that we earn that is allowed to be spent on only goods we are allowed to buy. So, for instance, hold on.
Yeah, no problem.
We do have choices, but limited. So, for instance, we got a bank loan to buy the house I'm currently living in now. I could not have gotten that same amount of money from that bank to invest in either of in any of your businesses. So, in other words, the $30,000 I got for a car loan could only be used to buy that car. So it's not $30,000 that I could choose to spend some here, spend some there, invest some here, invest some there. So we don't have any money we don't have this buying power that we can for instance, what I talk about in the book, when my favorite part actually is when the venture capitalist Nick Hanauer revealed on public broadcasting, NPR, that as a venture capitalist, his primary concern was that working people in general were not going to be able to earn enough to support the spending that capitalists need to keep the economy going, and that this would cause the realization that would have working people coming to, as he said, with the pitchforks and the knives or whatever.
Right.
The other point specific to this is that it was already being assessed that the inequality that Black people are suffering in this country pre-COVID was getting to the point so severe that Black people were not earning enough to be able to spend our normal contribution of spending, which they assessed was going to drop to about 4 to 6% drop in GDP. So in other words, the buying power we have is assessed as its ability to support and sustain this overall economy, not to enhance ourselves as a oppressed colonized community. We don't have money that we can use. And then the last part is, even if we did have some of that money, Akil made the point about toilet paper. The handful of Black companies that produce toilet paper would not be able to scale up big enough if we all started to try to buy from them tomorrow, somehow magically, and would then have to turn around immediately and go to a larger bank for an influx of capital to sustain the growth they would need to get more product to sustain. So in other words, the only hope economically is a public policy approach that redistributes all the consumption we're doing and the wealth we produce back to us.
And I'm all about that.
And that's why, and then I'll stop here. And that's why the elite have captured the political apparatus of this country.
I will agree with you, but I'll also say that American politics are frightfully broken at this point. I think that the one thing that 4 years of Donald Trump has done is that it's invalidated much of how we, effectively and efficiently run a country politically. And I would say also that in that same vein, in attempting to dig ourselves out of the last 4 years, and also COVID, and also the last weekend of May of 2020, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to aggressively, and not just like haphazardly, but like aggressively look at what we're doing, right, wrong, and different as Black people to solve for this issue. Because I think we have to solve for ourselves before the nation's going to solve for us, because they're not going to. So I think that a lot of that, to me, is, as much as I understand where you're coming from, for me, it's about being able to look at, say, and I want to pull you into this conversation because I know you're sitting there. So I wanted to say to you, like, how do I, because I've been thinking about this as well, and this is a deeper point related to the point we're talking about. How can people take their money and choose to spend it with you in a sustainable way? Like, what is a sustainable way to make that work and make that happen?
I would think for us, it would be that you need to see our businesses as essential. Like for me, it's like, so it's
like, I meant like you specifically. Like if I was like right now, like I have $50 in my pocket, I want to give it to you. What am I getting, and can I get it in 2 weeks?
You can get it in less than 2 weeks.
No, but you know what I mean? Like if like every 2 weeks I wanted to get something, or if I wanted to spend something, so that I knew that like we were transactional and I was supporting you and I was supporting the future of where we're headed as Black people. Because this is where I think it begins, like simplest conversation.
No, I agree. I think it's just changing your intention, and I think it goes both ways, right? So for, like you said, you know, businesses, Black businesses, we're communal, we're socialists, we're capitalists all at the same time. I know for me, our business, we're in the business of serving. So before I sell you a shirt, I'm actually in the business of serving whatever it is that you need. So even through COVID, for example, we were known, Geronimo Knows, like we're known for having like African fashion. That's what we've been known for, having fashion that represents the African diaspora. Through COVID, I did not buy one single item that had to do with African fashion, because what I saw was that my community needed toothpaste and soap and body wash. And so I think for us as businesses, and maybe Akil said it, that there's just not enough, we don't need t-shirts and shea butter. There's enough of that. I think as Black businesses, we need to find what is it that our community needs? Where are the gaps that we can fill? Like, yeah, there's freedom paper. There is freedom toilet paper. And it's true, just like Dr. Paul said, like if we were all to start, and I saw it because I work with Black vendors, that once we started pouring our dollars into ourselves, we don't have the infrastructure or the reach or the capital to continue to produce to meet our needs if we were to pour all of our dollars into our own businesses. We don't. I saw it. But I do think that it starts with us making that decision, because once that money does come in, that provides us an opportunity to either build something that is our own. So for example, there's a distribution company in Atlanta that opened that is allowing businesses to scale. So they're doing all of the drop shipping and packaging and everything like that. That is a Black woman-owned business that's doing something that was solely white business. We can use that and multiply that, learn from that, so that we can continue to bring those items into our stores and be able to serve customers and take your $50 willingly.
Yeah, because to me, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, because I look at this, and respect to you, Dr. Ball, but my thing is, I look at this and I go, okay, so for me, the thing is falling apart. Like the day after day after election day, 2016, like November 9th or whatever, I woke up and I said, okay, so the thing is broken. Now I'm going to like figure out for myself mainly, because I'm like, all right, I need to like solve this for me because I'm freaking out. How do I redistribute my wealth away from a system that I know is going to fall in on itself, so that I could be long prepared before anything happens to be able to do this? So I'm like, all right, where are people who are people I want to spend with? Why do I want to spend with them? Can they service me? And if I tell 5 of my friends, can they service 5 of my friends too? And to me, seeing where we've gone now, and watching the last 4 months, it's been fascinating to see people like rushing to catch up. And I'm like it's sad because you're like, I wish more people would have like had that notion. Not that I'm a genius by any stretch, because I'm not.
But that's not, there's not enough money
I
for
know
everyone to do what you're doing to help the collective. And and it still puts us back on this same model of, we have to then have faith that this black class of business people that we're supporting.
Well, if we don't have faith in ourselves, then who do we have faith in?
Well, that's why I want policy and legislation,
Right.
because
But if we-
history.
but if
Wait
we're
a second. Wait a second.
Okay,
Wait a second.
yourself,
The history is very clear.
Right, but if we're waiting for a system to do policy that we know is not going to do policy, then what are we doing?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying waiting for a system to do policy. I'm saying we have to work to generate the movements that are going to create the policy that are going to be.
The policy is not created on the street. The policy is created in the boardroom. And
I disagree. That's entire. We're seeing that proven incorrect right now. The policies are literally being redirected in the boardrooms in response to what people are doing in the street.
But they still have to be signed.
You're not. But
they still have to be signed. That's the thing. We can do all this work. We can advocate and work and do all of this stuff, and it's wonderful and it's appreciated. It's a good thing. But at the same time, when the rubber hits the road at the end of the line.
This is why. Okay, so. You're not. I'm not being heard on this point.
No,
so that's fine. No. I'm not even finishing the point. I haven't even finished. I've not yet finished the point. So this is why I wrote in the book, and I just keep falling back on. The only thing I'm resting on is I want to be clear on. There is not enough. The buying power mythology has to be addressed. There is no solution that can come from the redistribution of our consumption. There can only be a solution that comes from a redistribution of the wealth that is created from our consumption.
Right.
And all that you're describing right now is redistributing our consumption, which is what his history has shown does not work. That's why E. Franklin Frazier wrote The Black Bourgeoisie. This is why Earl O'Farrill wrote The Myth of Black Capitalism. This is why black businesses, even as you watch now, as soon as Jay-Z and others sign on, as soon as many professional athletes in particular sign on these big contracts, we see it reported all the time that they start voting Republican. Yeah. So this is why what I'm saying is we can't wait for the development of a black bourgeoisie that is going to somehow redistribute its wealth back to the rest of us. What I'm advocating is a movement. What I'm advocating is an organized social political movement that it creates and forces public policy to be changed so that whatever wealth is created is redistributed.
Even if it's changed, it has to be signed.
I understand that, but I'm saying part of what the movement I'm advocating would create the politicians that would sign it.
Okay, at the end of the line,
let's put a period. Let's put a period right here. Let's put a period right here. Because both of y'all are saying there's a modicum of similarity, but it's still very different.
On the same side, we're different sides of the same coin. I understand.
So let's put a period right there. Go ahead, Akil.
I'm on a totally different side. I'm on a totally different coin. I sat and I listened to what was being said, and a couple of things. First and foremost, when it comes to what let's start in sequentially. When you talked about journalism, when you talked about your predicament, the conundrum of writing for these white outlets and being paid XYZ amount of money, and writing for these black outlets and being paid XYZ amount of money. First of all, information is power. Information is its own currency. And if you don't understand the power in handing over your information, your hard-earned journalistic research to an outlet that is not going to responsibly distribute it, then the money that you're making should not matter, because you don't have any journalistic, jurisprudence. You don't care. You're doing this is a job, and that's cool. Listen, journalism is not a job. Journalism is something that you have to do earnestly in the pursuit of disseminating information. It's not about disseminating popular information. It's not about who's going to pay the most for it. If anything, which I was waiting to hear you say, it would be about exposure. That's the only reason I would ever want to work for Vice or CNN or anybody like that, so they could see me more often. Just do.
That's why I did it. That's why I still do it. That's why I still do it.
Interrupt you at all, brother.
Yeah, no problem. You know, okay, no problem.
I was very careful not to, because I wanna, you know, say a couple of things. So when I think of journalism and capitalism, those two things are inherently at odds. All right? Journalism's job is not to make capitalists look good. Capitalist's job is not to empower people who are exposing the ugly truth about the way that they function and the way that they do business, okay? Jay-Z was mentioned. I'm so glad you brought Jay-Z into the conversation. Heard you use Jay-Z for the forward of the book. Jay-Z, to me, is, I'm glad that Jay-Z made it out the hood. I'm glad Jay-Z has close to $1 billion, but that's a societal failure. Family. That man had to rap and swindle and shake his way out of the hood in order to be this guy, this one gigantic success, which thousands, tens of thousands of white successes are propped up on, and the black successes that are propped up on it, you might can count them. You might can get them in a room. You know what I'm saying? Tens of thousands of white kids have gone to college and gone on to have better participation in this capitalistic system because their parents worked in some capacity within the Jay-Z Rockefeller network. Capitalism begets more capitalism. It doesn't help people. It doesn't help. There's no trickle down capitalism, okay? The shit rolls downhill. Everything else rolls up. The money rolls up. The people on the ground are not getting rich, despite what anybody would like to tell you, despite what anyone would like to sell you. Jay-Z is not an example of somebody on the ground getting rich. He's an example of somebody on the ground figuring out how to make a whole bunch of other people at the top rich, and therefore he's more and more valuable. That's what your value escalates on. Last thing, well, this is the last couple of things. We were at a tipping point anyway. I agree with that assessment. We're at a tipping point. If you want to call it the election of 2016, you can call it that. We were at a tipping point anyway, culturally, and I believe economically. The stress that capitalism has been putting on underdeveloped countries, on this country, on the environment, on all types of different factors has just proven itself to be unsustainable. One of the things, I'm a student of the Roman Empire. I like to study empires, because one thing I know about empires is that they've all fallen. And somebody had to be alive during the fall of these empires and record how it went down. You know what I'm saying? And that's the history that we're missing right there, because I believe, and you know, this is my pundit opinion, that we're in the middle of watching the cultural decline or the actual decline of the American empire. And everything that's happening here, you have to understand, like, this is how things were meant to work. Like, this is not broken. The democracy that we practice is the same democracy that they practice in Rome. It was for white propertied men. They didn't mean for us to be voting. They mean for me to be getting educated. When I look at the experiment of public education, the conversations that Dr. Ball is having, if education was real, we would be having these conversations all the time. We would be actually an intelligent populace of people who can assess that, like you said, we only make $100 billion, so we couldn't be spending $1 trillion. There has to be something silly going on, something goofy going on with the math there. We are victims of propaganda and entertainment and, you know, symbolism. We soak that up and we pass that on as education. Again, to bring it full circle, that's not journalism either. What a lot of journalists tend to do, or people who position themselves as journalists, they tend to pass off accepted societal tropes and norms and develop them further rather than dig deep into the antithesis of those things and figure out how prevalent and how real that is. You feel what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of what Vice does. But they just do it for, you know, the alternative world. It's like, we're going to talk about people who do drugs, but we're not really going to talk about junkies. We're going to talk about people who have fun doing drugs. You know what I'm saying? They develop tropes and norms, and they put points on us. They make us eat it. And here's the thing, when we eat it, what we regurgitate, what we shit out is fuel for them. When we eat all that up, we become fuel for them. We become the people that fuel their consumption. We live in forced consumption. We don't have no choice. We all doing business over here on iPhones and MacBooks and all of that. We are all sitting out here talking on the internet. We're all using certain products. It's just life. This is the system we live in. So to me, I'm much more of a radical person. I would like to see it disrupted. I would like to see it collapsed. I don't believe policy is a real thing because, I mean, in the capacity that I understand American politics, reform is not a real desire by the people who are within it, right, or controlling it at least right now. And I just think that we should just, all really have some very serious conversations with ourselves, revolutionize your mindset. Just learn not to think of yourself as a consumer or a product in America. I'm not a product in America, bro. If I get money, that's great. But at the end of the day, I provide a service. I'm always useful, always essential, and we ain't gonna miss no meals. I need some more money, yes. I wanna get those bank loans. Yes, I wanna buy that big house and all of that right now. But we working on it. We'll get there, and we'll get there in a certain way. But we're not gonna get there by, kowtowing, should I say, to the thought process that allows them to do what they do. We gotta play the game, but we don't have to think like that. We don't have to believe what they tell us. We don't have to.
Akil, let me jump in real quick because Anika's got to go in a couple minutes. I want to definitely get her input on this because she is the only one on this call. But you mentioned in the piggyback off something you said, Akil, symbolism, and something that you brought up, you mentioned in the book, Dr. Ball, is Black women being used as the face of Black prosperity. And I wanted to quote a statistic that you also mentioned in the book that came from BlvckDemographics.com that was initially posted in the Griot back in 2012, which said, I believe it was 2012, maybe it was later than that. No, it was 2018. I'm sorry, it was 2018. But it's quoting a 2012 stat saying that the Griot, making reference to Nielsen extolling the virtues of Black women and hashtag Black Girl Magic, but only to the extent that these women drive sales for jewelry, social media, and their ability to run businesses and be brand loyal. And again, this is it's a 2012 report that was published initially on BlvckDemographics.com. So to that point, there is a lot of vitriol and anger towards happening within the Black community, in that a lot of people within the Black community believe that Black men aren't getting any of the shine, aren't getting any of the attention that's necessary, and that Black women are being made to seem as just like they're all that the Black community needs, and that and yeah, that's it. The Black women are all that the Black community needs. So with that, Anika, before you go, and everybody else can jump in on this too, do you believe, just what are your thoughts on that? Let me just make it open. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm about Black community, so I'm not gonna talk in any way that would be divisive as far as Black men and Black women. I think we need each other. It's a yin and yang. But being a Black woman, so a quote unquote double minority, I do understand, and I'm in it. I'm going to say I'm in the midst of it, right? So I'm in the midst of the rise of the Black woman. Most of the brands that are in my stores, most of the artists and creatives, most of the consultants that I work with, they happen to be Black women. I think that with the focus, so this is media, right? So with the focus, with them realizing that there is a power in selling to Black women, and in us being able to see ourselves, and then within ourselves, we're empowering ourselves to go out and do more. So now we're trending as far as having the most businesses. they're not necessarily the most successful businesses, but we're starting more businesses than anybody else. And so with that, you know, for me, I am appreciating the moment, because I think that we've always had to stand behind that, like I said before. But I don't think that I don't think that this movement that any of us want to see is going to happen without both Black men and Black women. I don't think that that's going to happen. We need each other, period. And so I think it's up to us to decide to say that, you know, we're in this society that is continuously splitting us apart, right? It started from slavery. It started from any, like, post-era, anything that we have been made to not work together, to not see the powers within each other. And I think that in order for our movement to happen, even you know, on the side of politics, or even if there's just a decision to spend our money here or there, whatever anybody's decision is, it cannot happen without the both of us. That's what I see. But I am very much a witness of, you know, large companies, big media saying, this is how we're going to sell to Black women, and using Black companies or Black woman-owned companies to get that information and that data in order to sell to us. I see it from companies that, you know, like, I've seen big media, Black-owned media companies, millennial companies that are gathering all sorts of data. And if I wanted to sponsor that company, they will not allow me to. But if Spotify wanted to support that company, they'll allow them to support that company. And I know that that what they're doing is basically selling our information. You know, it's just like,
that's 110% true, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just, you know, it's the same thing. And I mean, one really good Netflix show is a documentary, The Great Hack, about Facebook. It's an amazing documentary about the level of evil that the media can have, and that the level of information that can be taken to cause political unrest, genocide, and all sorts of things. And I am not going to think that they are not going to also utilize us as smaller pods of information and understanding to get our not only demographics, but psychographics and any other graphics that they can get from us smaller niches of the corners of the business, to use that in order for the larger consumption of their own media and ads and data and money and everything. So I just say that to say, I don't think that we can move anywhere without each other, but I am very much a witness to them pouring into, you know, fire onto the Black woman. I see that. Yeah, I see that.
Okay. Well, great point to end on. I appreciate you being on the call, Anika.
Thank you for having me.
So I'll talk to you soon. Please keep me posted with everything. Please, like, seriously, not just saying it just to say it. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Williams' book this week. We ordered the book. I ordered a book from y'all, Chancellor Williams, Destruction of Black Civilizations. I'm coming to get that this week. My wife put the order in. We coming.
Oh, from Nubian Hueman?
Yes.
I think
no,
I
don't know. I gotta check. But either way, I'm pulling up on MLK.
Yeah, you're gonna see me for real.
We'll be there. We'll be there.
Got you.
Word. Okay. So Dr. Ball, I want to throw it to you again as the author of the book. You know, you inserted that piece of information into the book. I want to get your thoughts on the matter, especially because you know, you are an observer as well of culture and media, and so I know for me, like, I'm tired of the division. I'm tired of just like the back and forth. It's just like, we're not getting it. We're all going in circles. And I think just even thinking about the bigger, the greater portion of the last 20 minutes that we spent talking about media and whatnot, this is an even better opportunity for more of us who are informed and well-intentioned, like truly well-intentioned, to just take control of the media narrative, regardless of how many eyeballs and how much money we're going to get or ad revenue, whatever, just because we're at a point where we have no choice. You know what I mean? We have no choice at this point, or else it's just going to get increasingly and aggressively worse.
Well, the first thing is that the reason that that's in my book is largely to talk about that buying power as a marketing concept and not a real indication of the economic condition of a group is applied to every segment of society that you can imagine. Mm-hmm. It's only weaponized against us. So even now, I mean, I have a Google alert set up. I get something on buying power every day, and they use it to assess any group segments of society you would never even think of. I mean, every grouping is broken down to say, how can we attract advertising to extract whatever spending this segment of society does to, for our benefit is how they're looking at it. So the division that you and the sister were just talking about is in this case created by a marketing concept that's looking to assess this one specific group, Black women. Mm-hmm. It's not meant to discuss, again, the overall condition of Black people or how Black women can help Black people overcome. And none of that is the trick. In fact, one of the stories that I cite, the Black girl magic is applied to a sister who works for Volkswagen and just helps diversify Volkswagen's approach to their own marketing campaign. That's how Black buying power and Black girl magic is defined by a white advertising community, but is regurgitated through a Black press and popularized as something Black people should aspire to or should have or hope in. And this is part of the mythology. So in fact, even going back to the something that Brother Marcus said earlier, that, it was the Washington Informer that shut down my argument and misreported it, and then took down the story from the website.
I remember when that happened.
Yeah. So, but the sister that wrote the story came back, as I told in the book, was regurgitating this stuff about buying power again in the pages of the Informer without my critique, just the last year, I think. So my point is, in this case, this is part of what I'm advocating here. I'm not advocating that we turn away from any segment of our community. What I'm saying is that in this case, we need to look critically at what the Black business class does. And in this case, what the Black business or commercial media class does, and then have a dialogue. Obviously, nobody wants to shut down the Black press. And we understand that the Black press has to earn money, but we have to find a way and maybe have some sort of off the record conversation that says, look, we know you need to promote this concept to earn money for your revenue generation.
Well, we're having that off the record conversation, by the way.
But can you stop telling this myth?
Yes, I can.
Not you. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. That's why we have to talk, though. I'm just making sure you know that's why we have to talk.
All right, check this out. I don't know. I mean, all of y'all have experiences with the Black press. I don't know. I think I might have to take the super cake here. My dad worked for the Informer, rocking with the Informer on MLK. What Mr. Ball is speaking of is true. These things be happening. Okay?
Yeah, they happen all the time. I'm not. But I'm. All so right. What I'm saying is, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Me, I used to work there. I had a story that I'm trying to, move for different reasons. I have projects I'm trying to move forward to expose viewpoints like Dr. Ball's and move forward. I'm reading Resistance, and it's all in the name of the subject of this brother's book, which is capitalism. This is all in service of capitalism. This is all in service of making money because they feel as though their existence, if they do not turn a profit, which they haven't done, by the way, for like 20 years. So let's keep it 1,000. You know what I'm saying? These are largely, a lot of these sometimes turn into very philanthropic, very, very much so money bleeding operations. However, let's just say we're not turning profits. We're not exceeding or seeing sales goals in the Black press. When I worked, and since we off the record, for the largest Black press trade organization, the NNPA, National Newspaper Publishers Association, yes, I wrote for them too. I wrote articles for them too. You know what I'm saying? They've been published in over 40 papers. I did all of that, but then I started talking a little bit too progressively about, hey, let's really examine, how we're going to pivot into this virtual economy that we're in. It's funny that COVID's happening and we're doing everything via screens. I'm trying my best to get these people to rock with screens. They telling me they want to sell ads in papers. again, I'm witness front seat to this ignorance. And that's why I don't believe that we're going to capitalism our way out of this, okay? We're not going to buy our way out of this. We're not going to support Black businesses our way out of this. It's going to take a radical change of thought, and it's going to take a devaluing of what they think is valuable and extreme escalation in value of what we find valuable, and we attack those things. We hold those things dear. We protect those things. That shit is powerful to us. That's our currency. Because you know what the new currency is? It's not even money no more. People talk about money. Billions of dollars do not exist in paper or in gold. They don't exist. Like these trillions that we're talking about that they just put out in PPP loans, them shits are binary code. They do not exist in any physical manifestation, all right? So with that being the case, okay, what is the real driving force behind that currency? Data. Data. You was just talking about it. How Anika was just talking about it. How these companies, they get these people's data. Why is Mark Zuckerberg rich? Because he got everybody's data. Why Google rich? They got everybody's data. Everybody, data is the currency. If you
Why every website has a cookie alert as soon as you go onto it.
I haven't logged onto a website in forever without one of those popping up, to the point where I stopped reading them. I used to be concerned. Now I'm not. It's part of the game. If I want to read The Atlantic, that's what I got to do. You know what I'm saying? Literally, my data is being sold, traded, and about, and whomever collects the most of my data is probably most, you could say, in ownership of me. They have stock over me. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh yeah, we know Akil. We can reach him on, Instagram. Blah, blah, blah. That's valuable. Because capitalism is meant to sell something. It's going to be a transaction at the end of the day. But the data is what gets you in the door. And that's what we giving up with our information, with our, approach to this particular problem. All of that. People are building, like Anika said, people are building these online platforms and all of that, only that Spotify come in and for cheap buy all your data. They sponsor you on the one thing, and now they got your whole email. You gave them your whole email list, every follower you got, every damn contact you got. It's just, again.
Definitely check out Surveillance Capitalism also.
We're not
Susanna
playing.
Zuboff. Yeah.
Say again?
I'm saying definitely check out Surveillance Capitalism by Susanna Zuboff. That will add so much depth to your argument there. It's freaky scary what's going on out here.
Surveillance
Capitalism.
It's a great book. It's really good.
So I'm right now, I've been thinking about this, but I'm going to do it right now. I am giving Akil the title of the modern day Petey Green right now.
That's
modern day
modern, right? And that's what I bought. Listen,
yeah, modern day Petey Green.
I'm still riding with Petey Green.
So,
with that.
So basically, Dr. Ball, because of these media companies have to sell, which I'm just saying this because of listeners. I know, but these media companies have to make money. It's just what you're speaking of, what you've written about, what you've researched and whatnot. These conversations might not get to the masses in the way that they need to, unfortunately. And so we probably won't see you on the Breakfast Club anytime soon, or is that on the calendar?
No, and in fact, almost on a weekly basis, somebody asks me, "How come you're not talking about this on Roland Martin's show?"
Right.
And this is not to pick on Roland or anybody for that matter, but if you just go on the front page of his website for Roland Martin Unfiltered, at the bottom it talks about how his show is important in helping direct the $1.3 trillion in Black buying power.
Right there.
So and the point is that he's got to convince his white advertisers, and unfortunately he needs them, because again, Black people don't earn enough that even if unless all of us literally were buying a subscription to his show, like, we can't support him in that way. So on the one hand, I'm very critical of commercial journalism, but on the other hand, I understand the forces that they're working within, and I don't take it personally. I'm just trying to point it out. So I don't have a beef with Roland, although we do disagree on some things politically. But I understand that there can be no, look, the Breakfast Club can't have this conversation, and many others can't have the conversation either. And I've noticed that I've made one round on some Sirius XM shows, but I won't make another. And it usually occurs before people actually read the argument and then read and start to think about, because even if I don't share my politics as all of you, I mean, the conclusions are logical. So you start whatever you define the ism at the end of the day, it's going to lead people to conclusions that are unpopular. So no, that's why I've always advocated. I'm an emancipatory journalist. I advocate grassroots journalism. That's the only way, that's the only. And just very quickly, when I talk about public policy, I'm not advocating going on to this current Capitol Hill and talking to these folks. I'm talking about the Malcolm X approach to electoral politics, where we are developing our candidates and our platforms and putting on the agenda. We want a redistribution of the wealth we create. That's what I'm really advocating. So that I'm not playing the game this way. I'm saying we need to approach the game differently so that the politicians theoretically we put up there would support this and say, look, hashtag respect my consumption. Because if I can't go to the movie theater, look real quick, this white dude is on a conservative radio show asked me, he said, so are you really trying to say that the person who buys the pizza is as important as the person that owns the pizzeria? I said, yes. I said, obviously. Obviously. You can own it all day. If I can't shop at it, or if I don't go in, or I can't afford to buy it.
But so anyway. Shows you how much capitalism is a lie, though, because being a businessman and being a person who serves customers, what are you taught? The customer is always right. Customer, take care of the customer. Your business is nothing without customer service.
Exactly.
Mastered that to the point where I don't get paid for the service I do. I get paid for the customer service. You paid me for the combo. I've been doing this 20 years and that only escalated. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, this capitalism that we practice, I love what you just said, Doc. These people are not the people we need to be talking to. They're not able to be reasoned with. They're beyond reaching. And it's unfortunate, but they're very deeply invested in this current system and the way that things are. And there's no will politically, culturally, any of that for real, for reform. If you look at we're in a pandemic right now. What do people want to do? Fucking go outside. I want to go to the club. I can't wait to go to the beach. Come on, fam.
I'm glad you brought that up, Akil. I'm glad.
But imagine how relaxed people would be, though. Part of that stress is because people don't have any money and they're stressed. Imagine if you said, look, if the government said, look, we need you to stay home and stay in the house and not go to the club or the beach, but we're going to cover all the money plus a little bit that you would have been earning at this time anyway, so that you can stay home and not worry about losing your house or your job or your bills or your health care, and then chill. And that's the contract we're going to make, because we can't have you going all to the club and to the pool and to the wherever else. So stay home. We got you. But they're not doing that. Yeah. They gave a couple dollars, and then they're saying nah. And then they give $6 trillion. To your point, they put a couple binary codes in, add $6 trillion to the CARES Act, and give it to their buddies.
A couple of numbers, and $6 trillion just came out the sky. I was like, where was this $6 trillion at?
All right. So boom. All right. So I think this is a good place to end on, since both of y'all mentioned COVID-19.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to get Dr. Ball's thoughts on how now we're in the midst of what all we're seeing economically, and even within dealing with the protests and unrest that we're seeing as well. How does the myth now fit into the current times that we're in, being as though, people really can't move and shake and spend like they used to, because they're either afraid to go outside, or the businesses aren't operating anymore, or they're not making the money to even spend. You know what I mean? How does this myth now play into the times that we're in?
Well, at least on one level, well, the first thing I want to say is what we're seeing now is a public relations backlash from the elite that is meant to make answering your question as difficult as possible. So one of the reasons why Amazon is offering all this black content and Netflix is doing this and the mayor in DC and Atlanta putting Black Lives Matter on the streets and all that. This is all part of the elite trying to say, well, you know, look, Kawhi Leonard hit it perfectly when he said, I don't know about putting a statement on my jersey. I want some policy that's going to help my people. But the end. So by the way, I noticed I even tweeted on the list of approved NBA approved statements for the jersey, they have cooperative economics, but not redistribution.
Wow.
So, you know, I mean, this is my point because the elite are cool. Look, I don't mean to disrespect the concept. We should work collectively, but the elite are cool with that because they know you can't collectively. You can collectively be poor as much as you want. You can't. So they're like, fine, collective economics is you will collectively be poor and we will collectively continue to make all the money from your labor and nobody will raise the questions that we need to raise. And, but what we should be seeing in this moment is what my argument and others have been trying to point out for a long time, that there is a role the consumer plays that should not be condemned by telling Black people that you're poor because you're not financially literate and you buy weed and rims and fronts and hair and do all this stuff, you know, like that's why you're poor. That's not why you're poor. In fact, we should be being told, do more of that, because you're giving people jobs and you're helping people have health care. And what should happen is that instead of the wealth going to that 1%, it should come back to you in the form of health care and jobs and food and housing and education and paved roads. I mean, I grew up around DC all my life. I would love to see all the roads get paved. I lived up there in Malcolm X Park before the new gentrification wave hit. And saw, I mean, so I look, instead of, why should everybody have to leave DC to get a, you know, anyway, so anyway, that's what we should be seeing. No, but I'm just saying that's what we should be seeing right now is happening. I mean, we are seeing the myth play out. As soon as people can't shop and can't participate and go to the club and everything collapses, then the elite have to create fictitious money to save themselves and more public relations nonsense for us to distract us and confuse us and to blame us. I mean, you hit the point for me, which is one of the crux of my argument. Points of my argument is that the myth of buying power is developed in part to make to blame us for being poor, to blame poor people for being poor, and say you're ignorantly spending your money, and you could be.
You spend X money.
Anyway. That's it.
You could have bought this, that, and the thing. I used to kill people with this Jordans and passport. You bought all these Jordans. You could have bought the house, and you got Jordans. You ain't got no passport. Yo, let me tell y'all something. I got both, right? And let me tell you something. My Jordans are worth more than my passport right now.
And there it is. And there it is.
Are worth way more than my passport.
They're probably worth more than gold too.
Right.
I mean,
you can't go nowhere.
Go.
And you can't leave the country.
Well, you at least can't go to Europe. Not on American, or they won't let you in there.
There's a lot of countries that won't let the United States citizen in there.
75% of the world.
The blue passport don't mean nothing right now.
75% of the world will not allow American citizens to travel.
Wow, I didn't know it was that high. That makes sense though.
75% of the world will refuse American citizens right now.
Yeah.
Because we're a contagion risk.
I'm gonna tell y'all something. I hope y'all really was with me on this, because we there now. Money ain't real. Money is not real. The people, the unlimited capacity to spend what we consider money, never have to see it. Short story. I used to work on the Hill. I worked in the Senate. When I worked in the Senate, I was there at the time of Ted Kennedy. I worked in the Senate as an intern during Bill Clinton's impeachment. Whole long story, whatever. Anyway, when I was there, Ted Kennedy had a dog. His dog was named Splash. It was one of them tall-ass poodles. That joint used to just walk around the Capitol like a human being. Literally, you would see Splash walking around doing his shit. He walked around in the same way as this goddamn dog, literally just walking around, not doing anything. Whenever he saw a stand or a newsstand or somewhere where he, wanted something, this man would literally get anything he wanted, grab it, and if it was never even a thought to him to pay for it. He didn't stop at the cash register. The Kennedys, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Johnson & Johnsons, the Procters & Gambles, they don't acknowledge money in the same way we do. And the money, the wealth that they possess, that we have, and that we claim that we want, and that's going to change our lives, et cetera, is not attainable. That's not real. You'll never be Ted Kennedy, bro. You can get money, you can get rich. Chris Rock said it best. Rich is some shit you can fuck up with a coke habit in a bad summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can never lose. Those people, the people who have wealth in America and the tributaries, you got to understand, like the Waltons, all of those people and the people who work directly underneath of them, whose names we don't know, will never know. They are dealing with wealth. We're dealing with trying to get rich or die trying. They dealing with wealth. And I don't want to play get rich or die trying. I want to play let's get free. That's what I'm on. I just want freedom, B. And freedom is not predicated on financial excellence. It's predicated on sustainability. It's predicated on understanding what you're trading in and what your currencies are and what your assets versus your liabilities are. America keep us chasing. I don't want to chase. I want to get out the chase. But it seems as though it's not possible within this particular land. So I always talk about
One final point, because you made me think about this, Akil, and you've mentioned this numerous times on the core report. You and I haven't even talked about it on the core report. And so since we're all here, divestment. That's a hot topic now, in the midst of the social unrest that we're seeing and the protests and everything like that. And once again, we are now witnessing the lives of Black people being completely disrespected and just undermined and just devalued, full front and center again. It happens every few years in the media. So now a lot of people are like, okay, we had it, we out, divesting in various forms. People talking about going into the middle of nowhere, and just living off the land. Other people are talking about repatriation or expatriation, whatever is your pleasure. Whether it's going to the continent, some other country that you will feel like you can live your life and not have to worry about some person that is not Black keeping their foot on your neck. So I wanted to get you all's thoughts on divestment, and I want to end with your thought on divestment, Dr. Ball. So Marcus, Akil, whichever one of y'all want to go first on that, then Dr. Ball, and then we're going to end for real.
Divestment in America or divestment in the system?
Divestment from the system. Let's say that.
Okay.
However that looks for some people.
Funny you say that, because for me, divestment from the system is essential. For me, I try not. It's funny. I was drinking this Gatorade during the cast because I try to actively not support anything that's too big of a corporation, given the economic state of America. Divesting from a system is difficult, but I think it's necessary as much as you can, because the system is proven to not work. And try to radically socialize yourself and adjust for understanding humans over businesses, I think is the key. And that's something that I literally do 75% of my life right now. And it's like a very conscious choice that I made. And it works. Like, you just have to be thoughtful. And I think that that's one thing that we don't think about enough as Americans across the board, Black, white, brown, purple, red, is that we don't think about that level of how we should be not so invested in the traditional construct. So I think that looking forward, I think that's something that more people should be definitely cognizant of, because there's not going to be much of a construct left as far as capitalism goes, like the traditions of it, post-COVID, just the way the industry is looking right now. Like, being ahead of that curve, I think, is a essential thing. So I think that's I am wholeheartedly a believer in divesting from the system.
Okay. It looks like Akil dropped off. I don't know if he'll be able to get back in before we end, but Dr. Ball, your thoughts on divestment?
Well, just again, I appreciate the conversation and being invited to it. I really dig this kind of back and forth. So I appreciate all of you. But I don't know. I mean, the first thing I always think of is that I would at least advocate a cognitive or an analytical divestment of sorts, to say, like, you know, to start with, you know, because in many ways, for many of our folks, you know, adjusting shopping habits, or certainly, you know, moving geographically is just not a viable option. So at least as a starting point, I think, you know, intellectual divestment is important, to say, I'm going to find new sources of information. I'm going to expand my politics. I'm going to find people to my left politically to debate with or listen to. I think that's always important, to find new media sources. I'm glad I found out about this collective, and you know, I mean, all of this is important. And then, to the extent possible, certainly redirect our shopping to Black businesses, particularly Black businesses that have some sort of social or cultural or communal, you know, link, something substantive with people in the community, maybe. All of that I think is important. And then, to the extent possible, you know, to me, when I hear about, you know, because even I have the option or consider the option of leaving the country, but to me, it's very individual. It's this individual or small family solution. And it some way feels like an abandonment of the fight and of others who can't, you know, join you or me. So I would at least advocate the intellectual divestment, and then from there see what can come up practically as a solution. But yeah, anyway, and I actually would like to, you know, I'd like to think that this book is an argument for an intellectual divestment from a lot of popular mainstream
intellectual divestment.
So,
yeah, it definitely is. For anybody, especially for anybody who, because there's a lot of books that we can point out that could be considered intellectual, a person's first foray into intellectual divestment, right? But I definitely think this is a good starting point, because consumption is something that people already know about, because it's something that we all do to varying degrees, and what we spend on it, it's all different, but we all are consumers. Mm-hmm. So it absolutely is that. I will say, I don't want to speak for Akil, because it doesn't look like he's gonna be able to get back on, but I will say what I do know, what I have known him to say about divestment, and you can check out his podcast as proof. He said this. He is of the thinking that, yes, divesting intellectually, fighting in the struggle here. Oh, he's back. Perfect. Just in time. Okay. He's back. All right, Akil, you back? Because I was about to try to like think about all the things you've said about divestment. Because I didn't know if you was gonna be able to come back on.
My bad. It's all cool. It's all good.
All right, so your thoughts on divestment.
Oh, for me right now?
Yes. Yeah. You're the final point.
Oh man. Okay, cool. So just for me on divestment, yo, listen, we can't get out of here, man. Like they've been very invested in not letting us divest. Like I've been reading this book, current reading, Carol Anderson, White Rage. I actually read 2 of her books. I saw her on Democracy Now! One day, and I was just very impressed. And we ordered both of her books. One is called One Person, No Vote. It's about, you know, the historic disenfranchisement of Black people, which shows you how, like, we're not going to vote our way out of this. And this other book, White Rage, that I'm reading right now, it's just about how, like, yo, they're invested in not having us divest. So it's important for us, I think, to find a way, or find the best kind of rebellion is that it is divestment, but it has to be in a sneakier way. It has to, I hate to say it just has to be very strategic. It has to be something that's very deliberate, because this country is not, like, yo, Marcus Garvey just wanted to leave. Marcus Garvey had votes and everything. He was like, yo, we could go. J. Edgar Hoover was like, hell no. That's crazy. Y'all trying to get banks and get money and buy ships and leave? Y'all tripping. Like, the Black Panthers, let me tell y'all something. we only have school breakfast right now because the Black Panthers started feeding children. That's the only reason the public schools feed children today. It's because some Black kids did it first, and they was like, oh no, that shit is dangerous. They're gonna stop relying on us for breakfast. They're gonna stop relying on us for their life. So all I'm saying is like, what divestment looks like, again, is a little more strategic. It's just a step-by-step ending of your reliance on white folk, man. And we just be relying on white folk. It's set up that way though. It's not by accident. It's not something that's going to be easy to overcome. We are very reliant, yo. We are colonized. That's where Britain messed up the money. Britain let the United States become self-sufficient. And then they was like, we don't need y'all no more. Colonialism, we out of here. And I'm telling you, that's this American history of belligerence and aversion to suppression is what's ultimately going to crush this system. Like, I watched James Baldwin, I Am Not Your Negro, recently, and he was talking about, how America is going to collapse from the Negro problem just by virtue of the Negro still being here. Just by us being here is problematic. So I don't even think that, not to say that divestment isn't possible, but I don't think it's going to be the practical solution. This has to crumble. It has to break. It has to break fully. And it has to be replaced with something that's different. You know what I'm saying? Like, perhaps some guys who owned slaves in the 1700s maybe had a limited worldview. Just maybe. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we should rethink some of the concepts that they had. If we want to continue to exist on this land, I think that, this joint might fracture. I think secession might happen. Like, I think California or Texas or
California.
That's definitely happening. Colexit is a thing.
Like in our lifetime, or
Wow.
maybe we all be much older or something like that. I think like Texas or California or something like that could secede and be their own whole country. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, we already did a civil war. They know a lot of people going to die, so they don't want to do that again. So they'll probably be like, yo, you know what? Y'all go ahead and go. You know what I'm saying? I just see a different future. I see a brave new vision of the world that don't look nothing like the shit that I spent my first 30 some odd years dealing with. And I think that requires a braveness of thought that a lot of people, because they're so wedded to capitalism, don't want to exercise. So I say that divestment, like physically, that's cool, but divestment mentally that's that big hurdle. That's the joy. Yo, you can still divest mentally and use your iPhone to read some cool shit and buy some sneakers, baby. You know what I'm saying? But like, you gotta divest mentally from this, so your children are divested from this, so that they children are not married to this concept of capitalist supremacy and winner-take-all economics and white supremacy and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, Black people, like you said, this whole economy thing, they talk about our buying power like it's somehow we should be ashamed of liking adornment or liking, you know what I'm saying, cultural expressions that manifest themselves in gold teeth or rims or Jordans or whatever it is. The only negative part of that equation is that we're not the ones supplying the gold for the gold teeth or the Jordans for the feet or the rims for the car. But a lot of us are not aware of that on any tangible level that's going to affect our desire to have those things. And they're culturally important for us to be who we are and be what I want to be at the end of the day, which is free. So,
and if we followed where those that gold, how that gold was mined and everything, we probably might not want to touch it anymore.
Yeah,
that's
you know, that's
another
diamonds, that hurt.
That's
Other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. That's a whole other conversation.
Beers, you know what I'm saying? We can talk about Joseph. We can talk about Cecil Rhodes. We can talk about
but
that's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole
like
other
I said,
conversation.
we just saying that mentally start thinking about shit differently. Just start thinking about them as the villains. I think of them as the villains. I think of Cecil Rhodes. I think of John Rockefeller. I think of Vanderbilt and J.P. Morgan. I don't think of them as heroes. They're villains to me. You know what I'm saying? The robber barons, I think that they're like bad people. I don't believe in the myth that, I don't think Jay-Z's a hero. Fuck that. I love Jay-Z. I don't think Jay-Z's a hero, dog. I don't like a lot of stuff Jay-Z does. I think Jay-Z is an arch capitalist. Jay-Z will do whatever it takes to make $1 billion. And that's cool. That sounds great. You know what I'm saying? To the people who don't have to be on the other end of that shit that happens. You know what I'm saying? To spectators, it's cool. To the gladiator, you got to go in there and kill. So that's what capitalism is, yo. This is the arena. We in the arena. So, you know, I mean, I realize I'm in the arena. I ain't going to get out. So my divestment level is high, but it's not that high. You know, unless I can get out of this country.
So this is what I'm going to say just to end. I think that however people divest, however they choose, whether it is, again, solely mentally decolonizing your mind, all of that, if it's actually physically leaving the country once people with a blue passport can leave the country again, or even if it's moving to the middle of nowhere and don't nobody know where you are, and you are neighbors with the next iteration of the Unabomber. Either way,
I may know something about that.
I think that, see, you've already said too much. So I think that we gotta stop talking about it and just be about it. I think that, like, literally, like, just stop talking about it, because again, the more we talk, the more the people who are invested in our labor are going to make sure that we can do none of the above.
We can't flip,
So stop talking, just do it. Like you said, just be strategic, be intentional, just go. So that's where I'm gonna end it. Brothers, and send a shout out to Anika again, who I know will hear this.
Shout out Anika.
Appreciate y'all for coming on.
Shout out Dr. Ball, yo. I need this full book.
You.
I need to
man, get the book.
Really
you need to put it on the shelf.
I'm about to cop this book. This book is getting copped. Absolutely.
And by the way, again, it's free. You can get the e-copy for free at imixwhatilike.org. So
it's okay. That's cool.
It's on point, man.
But I want to own it.
Everybody go to imixwhatilike.org, get the e-copy. If you want to actually spend a couple more dollars, you get the hard copy, put it in your bookshelf like I did. Everybody, real quick, we're just going to go through, tell people where they can find you. Akil, Marcus, then Dr.
What's
Ball.
the title? What's the title of the book again, y'all?
The Myth and Propaganda.
What's the title of the book?
The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. You got it? I'm assuming that he has it.
Yeah.
All right, when he comes back on, we'll get his socials. Marcus, tell everybody where they can find you.
Find me at Marcus with the K, Dowling, Dowling.
I mean, it's already in my emails and all of that, but I just want to make it a point, because I'm going to talk about it on my show, which I'm going to do in a few minutes.
Okay, cool. So, all right, so then to get you off, then so you can go get prepared for that, tell people where they can find you. Then we come back to you, Marcus. Kill.
Me?
Yeah. Tell everybody where they can find you.
So, all right, you can find me at Black Broadway, BLVCK Broadway at Instagram. I do a show called The Core Report, which I do daily, which we do the headlines. We talk about the top stories in the news. We do a little bit of opining on the current state of things. And, we just connect with the people. We do that on Instagram Live, again, at Black Broadway. You can go to iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, any Breaker. I think it's 8 platforms, anywhere you stream podcast content. And you can listen to the episodes of The Core Report under, again, Black Broadway, BLVCK Broadway podcast. So, we there, man. Those are my platforms.
All right, Akil. Appreciate you.
Yo, thank y'all so much, man. It was great. I really enjoyed this convo. Enjoyed talking to y'all. I learned a lot, for real. So,
appreciate you coming on, brother. Man. Appreciate
for real.
You.
Peace. Thank y'all a lot. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
All right, Marcus, where can everybody find you?
Find me at Marcus with the CK Dowling, Dowling, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I am sharing stuff about the stuff that I'm writing, the stuff that I'm reading. To that point that Dr. Ball said about breaking your mind out of traditional norms. I'm all over the map, and G will attest to that. So yeah, definitely follow me. There's a lot going on in my head at any given time, so it's a fun trip.
Okay.
And this was an immense pleasure. I appreciate, Dr. Ball, I appreciate your opinions on these things, because they're necessary, and people have to think differently in order to do differently. So I agree.
All right, Dr. Ball.
Hey.
Last but not, is most certainly not least, where can people find you?
Well, again, I agree. These conversations are important. I love this whole experience. Thanks again to everybody, all of you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have our website, imixwhatilike.org, which people can look at and see as a shout out to Steve Biko in terms of the name. I write what I like. Our social media is at imixwhatilike on IG and Twitter. And we have a lot of great stuff, audio, video, written work at imixwhatilike.org. Of course, this book is free. A lot of other kinds of stuff is up there from me and other people. And again, I appreciate it. And like Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. Thanks again, man. Thank you.
Peace, y'all. It was great.
Right on.